I must admit that Copilot for Visual Studio Code is one of my favorite tools for working with artificial intelligence when I need to edit specific file, and for complete and more complex edit, Cloud Code maybe is better. And what I don't like of Visual Studio Code Copilot is that I can really manage model and choose other kind of model that I can use, but the choosing is quite a bit limited, even if you have open router, so you can use open router to basically route everything, every large language model into your GitHub Copilot. But I'm like to use a different approach of the problem to solve this in a different way. Actually, if you see, I have my Ollama Yarp project open. The key of everything is this Yarp reverse proxy. NuGet packages is a package that contains an implementation made by Microsoft, is officially supported, of a complete reverse proxy written in .NET technology, so you can import in your project, and with almost zero code, you can configure a reverse proxy. And the nice thing is this reverse proxy exposes everything you need to intercept the call, manipulate the call, and so you can transform requests, redirecting to different endpoint and to manipulate. And this is the key for me to better learn how GitHub Copilot and other software are actively using large language model, and also allow me to use everything thanks to litellm proxy. The key is that I already have, and I've done a previous video on the subject, I have already my light LLM working on a Docker container. It's just one line of Docker container and you are up and running. And I have in the models endpoint all the model that I'm actively supporting listed. And it's almost, it is supporting almost everything because litellm has a proxy for everything. So basically, if I can make my Visual Studio Code Copilot talk with my litellm proxy, actually I have the ability to use every model with very small effort. Now, Copilot support for new model is continually evolving, but at the time I started this project, one of the best supported model is Ollama. Ollama is a server that is capable of running your own local large language model, but actually you can use to talk to litellm proxy because you can set another proxy that simulate Ollama, and instead of using Ollama, it simply redirect to litellm reverse proxy, and everything thanks to Yarp reverse proxy. When you start working with Yarp, you have usually you can create transform provider interfaces. You can implement transform provider interfaces. And with this kind of transform, you can simply transform request and response at your will. So as an example, when I got a request on API tags, that's the endpoint of Ollama that returned the list of models supported by Ollama. I simply redirect to /models because, you know, /models is the endpoint litellm proxy answer to, okay? The basic redirection is configured in app-setting JSON, and it's really simple. The documentation of Yarp is really complete. And I simply say, hey, catch all. So everything that every request you made to this endpoint, you redirect to localhost 4000. So it's very, very simple. And this software will listen to the port 11434, that is the standard port of Ollama. So actually, I have no Ollama running. So if I'm actually manage model and click Ollama, nothing happens because Ollama is not running. But if I'm running this software, when I'm selecting manage model and Ollama, Visual Studio Code Copilot is asking to this endpoint and to the endpoint API tags, which is the list of the models. And then I have other redirections, such an example, API show is the endpoint of Ollama, where Ollama tell the caller which is the model. So the detail of a model. So I simply read the body of the request because this is a post request. And I simply simulate an answer in which I simply say, hey, this model has the basic chat capabilities. So nothing more. And when instead I have a call to v1 chat completion, that is the endpoint to actually call the large language model with the chat model of OpenAI, I simply do some manipulation. And this is unfinished example. I will show in a future video what can you do with this. But basically, you can also intercept standard completion chat and do whatever you want. But let's see how this works running the software. Now, let's jump into action. So right-click, debug, start without debugging. So actually, I'm starting my proxy. As you can see, it dumps some information. It is listening on HTTP, all the IP addresses of the machine, import 11434. So it is simulating Ollama. Now, if I'm going to the Copilot Manage Model section, already you can see that I have now a lot of model because I already configured this. But if you press Manage Model and you select Ollama, you see something were dumped in below, like in this area. Is this the console of the software running? Because it is actually transforming. So request path rewritten from API tags to API models. So my GitHub Copilot is believing that this is calling Ollama, and instead is calling my proxy. And my proxy redirect to litellm proxy that in turn redirect to the final API. So actually, thanks to this small trick, I can use in Copilot all the models that can be managed by litellm proxy. That is almost everything. So you can select, you see, you have a checkbox in which you can select which model you want to use. So you can select. Once you press OK, as you see, you have all this model right at your fingertips. So if you want to use Gemini 1.5 Flash and say in ask mode and say, hi, who are you? And actually this request is redirected to the litellm proxy that in turn redirect to the final, the real API in Google. And it say, I am GitHub Copilot. And that is because the prompt that Copilot is sending to the large language model is quite complex. And what we'll see in the next video, how which is the exact communication between Copilot and your own large language model. For now, you can see that thanks to very few lines of C#, I was able to simulate running Ollama instances that instead proxy all the requests to my litellm proxy that in turn proxy the request to the real LLM provider. And that gives me the ability in GitHub Copilot to actually use every model you have. So that's really nice and simple. And it opens the door to very interesting things because this is a basic proxy, but you can intercept the call and you can manipulate the result, and you can do this for very interesting stuff. Bye bye. See you in the next video.